The glittering facade of the Los Angeles fashion and publishing world is built on a foundation of carefully guarded secrets, ruthless ambition, and fragile alliances. For the Spencer family, the illusion of unity has always been a delicate balancing act, orchestrated by the formidable patriarch, Bill Spencer. Recently, Bill summoned his son, Wyatt Spencer, back to the sun-drenched shores of California. The official narrative was one of family consolidation, a strategic move to fortify the Spencer empire and integrate Wyatt into the expanding operations, particularly concerning the massive new developments of the Logan fashion house. Liam Spencer, ever the optimist, had been championing this reunion, dreaming of a united brotherhood that could stand unshakable against any corporate or personal storm. However, the universe has a cruel way of shattering illusions, and Wyatt is about to discover that the very foundation of his family is rotting from the inside out. The day began as a mundane chapter in the high-stakes world of Spencer Publications. Wyatt, eager to prove his commitment and solidify his newly minted position within the Logan enterprise, was dispatched on a simple errand. Bill needed a specific set of confidential legal documents that he had carelessly left behind at his Malibu beach house. It was a task that required discretion but carried no inherent danger. Wyatt, driving along the scenic Pacific Coast Highway, felt a sense of renewed purpose. He was back in the fold, working alongside his father and brother, ready to navigate the complex corporate marriage between Spencer Power and Logan Creativity. He decided to head to the beach house earlier than expected, hoping to retrieve the files and return to the office ahead of schedule, a small gesture of his dedication. As Wyatt pulled into the private driveway of the sprawling Malibu estate, the ocean breeze carried the familiar, comforting scent of salt and eucalyptus. The house, usually a bastion of loud declarations and boisterous family gatherings, sat in an eerie, sun-drenched silence. The rhythmic crashing of the waves against the shore masked the subtle sounds of life within the walls. Wyatt unlocked the front door and stepped into the cool, expansive foyer. He moved with the casual familiarity of a son returning home, his mind preoccupied with the impending board meetings and the intricate logistics of Hope Logan's transition to the Logan fashion house. He did not call out to announce his presence, assuming the house was entirely empty. That silent assumption would prove to be the catalyst for the destruction of his reality. Navigating through the opulent living space toward his father's private study, Wyatt's sharp senses picked up on a subtle anomaly. A pair of discarded heels near the plush sofa. The faint, unmistakable lingering scent of an expensive, familiar perfume. It was a fragrance that belonged to the upper echelons of Forrester Creations, a scent that commanded boardrooms and captivated men. Wyatt's footsteps slowed, his brow furrowing in confusion. The study door was slightly ajar, casting a sliver of golden afternoon light into the darkened hallway. As he approached, the low murmur of hushed, intimate voices drifted through the opening. The tone was not one of business or casual conversation. It was a sound heavy with history, desire, and clandestine familiarity. Wyatt stepped closer, his hand hovering over the polished wood of the doorframe. He peered through the narrow gap, expecting perhaps to find his father engaged in a private negotiation. Instead, the scene that unfolded before his eyes sent a violent, paralyzing shockwave through his entire nervous system. He stood absolutely frozen, his breath catching painfully in his throat. There, in the center of the room, illuminated by the harsh reality of the California sun, were Bill Spencer and Brooke Logan Forrester. They were not merely talking. They were locked in a deeply passionate, all-consuming embrace. Their kiss was frantic, hungry, and undeniable. It was the kind of physical connection that spoke volumes of a history that refused to stay buried, a fire that had clearly been burning in secret for a very long time. The sheer visual impact of the betrayal was staggering, but it was the immediate, cascading realization of what this meant that truly devastated Wyatt. As he watched his father's hands entangle in Brooke's iconic blonde hair, the puzzle pieces of recent months violently snapped into place. This was not a momentary lapse of judgment. The ease of their touch, the desperate familiarity of their embrace. It all screamed of a long-term, meticulously hidden affair. They were carrying on this illicit romance right under the nose of everyone they claimed to love. The betrayal cut across multiple family lines, severing loyalties with surgical precision. Brooke was married to Ridge Forrester, playing the role of the devoted matriarch, while Bill was deeply entangled with Katie Logan, Brooke's own sister, playing the role of the supportive partner in her new fashion venture. Wyatt's internal monologue spiraled into a chaotic storm of disgust and disbelief. He thought of poor Katie, a woman who had already endured unfathomable heartbreak and humiliation at the hands of these exact two people. Katie, who was currently pouring her heart and soul into building the Logan Fashion House, relying on Bill's financial backing and emotional support. Katie, who had finally allowed herself to trust Bill again, only to be made a fool of in the most cruel and intimate way possible. The staggering hypocrisy of Brooke Logan also hit Wyatt like a physical blow. Brooke had been publicly warring with Katie and Steffy over Hope's career, acting as the moral compass of the family, fiercely protective of her daughter's legacy at Forrester. Yet behind closed doors, she was systematically destroying her sister's life by sleeping with her partner. The silence in the hallway became deafening as the blood roared in Wyatt's ears. He could not unsee the image burned into his retinas. The anger, hot and righteous, began to bubble up, overriding his initial paralysis. He could not simply walk away and pretend this grotesque violation of trust had never happened. With a heavy, deliberate motion, Wyatt pushed the study door wide open. The heavy wood swung back, hitting the wall with a dull thud that shattered the intimate bubble inside the room. Bill and Brooke sprang apart, the sudden intrusion tearing them from their clandestine world. Brooke's face instantly drained of color, her eyes wide with a mixture of sheer panic and profound guilt. She instinctively pulled her blouse together, her breathing ragged as she stared at the man who had just uncovered her darkest secret. However, it was Bill's reaction that truly chilled Wyatt to the bone. While Brooke looked like a deer caught in the headlights, vibrating with the shame of her actions, Bill Spencer simply adjusted his jacket. The initial flash of surprise in Bill's steely eyes vanished almost instantly, replaced by a cold, calculating hardness. There was no scramble for excuses, no desperate plea for understanding, and absolutely no trace of remorse. Bill stood tall, his posture projecting absolute authority, as if Wyatt were the one who had committed an offense by interrupting them. The legendary dollar bill, persona, snapped into place, ruthless and impenetrable. He looked at his son, not with the warmth of a father caught in a moment of weakness, but with the predatory gaze of a CEO assessing a sudden liability. "Wyatt," Bill said, his voice dangerously low and dangerously calm. The single word hung in the air, a silent command for Wyatt to tread very carefully. Brooke, unable to bear the heavy silence, practically fled to the far side of the room, turning her back to hide her tears of panic. Wyatt stood his ground, his fists clenched at his sides. He demanded an explanation, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and profound disappointment. He threw Katie's name into the room like a grenade, reminding his father of the woman he was actively destroying. He pointed out the sheer insanity of Brooke risking her marriage to Ridge, a marriage that had already survived countless storms, for a cheap thrill with her sister's partner. Wyatt laid bare the ugliness of their actions, expecting at least a flicker of shame from his father. Instead of an apology, Wyatt received a masterclass in psychological warfare. Bill stepped forward, invading Wyatt's personal space, using his physical presence to intimidate. He did not deny the affair. He did not offer platitudes about it being a mistake. Instead, Bill immediately weaponized Wyatt's ambitions against him. He reminded Wyatt, in excruciating detail, of the power dynamics at play. Bill pointed out that Wyatt's highly coveted, newly secured position at the Logan Fashion House, a role that Wyatt desperately needed to establish his own legacy and financial independence, was entirely dependent on Bill's influence and capital. Bill was the architect of this new corporate landscape, and he could demolish Wyatt's career with a single phone call. The atmosphere at Forrester Creations has never been more suffocating, transforming the once glamorous halls of the fashion empire into a brutal corporate battlefield. Steffy Forrester Finnegan stands at the epicenter of this relentless war, fighting tooth and nail to defend her legacy against the encroaching forces of the Logan family. The recent clashes have left her emotionally drained and constantly on the defensive. Ridge Forrester's definitive decision to shut down Brooke Logan Forrester's audacious pitch for the co-CEO position provided Steffy with a momentary sigh of relief, but she knows the victory is fragile. The Logans are not known for surrendering easily, and the hostility radiating from Brooke and Hope Logan Spencer is a palpable force that threatens to consume everything Steffy has worked so hard to build. Every board meeting, every design review, and every casual encounter in the executive suites is laced with venom and unspoken threats. Steffy has had to project an image of absolute invulnerability, a titanium shield designed to deflect the relentless scheming of her rivals. However, behind the closed doors of her private office, the titanium shield is beginning to crack under the weight of an entirely different, infinitely more terrifying crisis. The physical toll of the corporate warfare had been manifesting for weeks. Bouts of sudden nausea, uncharacteristic fatigue, and a lingering sense of dizziness that Steffy initially brushed off as the natural consequences of extreme stress and countless sleepless nights. She had convinced herself that her body was simply reacting to the adrenaline of defending her throne against Brooke's power grabs and managing the fallout of Hope's delayed fashion line. But as the symptoms persisted and her calendar revealed a glaring biological delay, a cold, insidious dread began to coil in the pit of her stomach. The undeniable reality of her physical state could no longer be ignored or rationalized away by board meetings and fabric shortages. Driven by a desperate need for confirmation, Steffy found herself staring down the barrel of a reality she was entirely unprepared to face. The sterile silence of the executive bathroom at Forrester Creations served as the backdrop for the most earth-shattering moment of Steffy's recent life. Her hands trembled violently as she held the small plastic pregnancy test, the ticking of her own heartbeat drowning out the muffled sounds of the bustling design studio beyond the heavy oak door. When the undeniable positive result materialized in the tiny window, the air was instantly sucked from the room. Steffy collapsed against the cool marble vanity, her breath catching in her throat as the room spun wildly around her. Under normal circumstances, a positive pregnancy test would be a cause for boundless celebration, a joyous addition to the beautiful life she had cultivated with her devoted husband, John Finn Finnegan. But in this agonizing, suffocating moment, there was no joy. There was only a paralyzing, all-consuming horror that threatened to drag her into an abyss of her own making. The source of this profound terror was a memory that Steffy had violently repressed, a dark secret buried beneath the facade of her perfect marriage and her commanding corporate presence. Her mind aggressively flashed back to a single, catastrophic night of lost control, a night where the crushing pressures of her life had driven her into a moment of profound weakness. In the midst of the escalating drama surrounding Hope's career crisis and Liam Spencer's relentless meddling, Steffy and Liam had found themselves alone, their shared history and heightened emotions creating a toxic, irresistible gravity. It was a lapse in judgment that defied all logic, a fleeting surrender to old, destructive patterns that she had sworn were entirely in the past. Now, staring at the positive test, the agonizing truth slammed into her with the force of a freight train. She could not be absolutely certain who the father of this unborn child was. The baby growing inside her could be a beautiful testament to her love for Finn, or it could be the devastating consequence of her reckless transgression with Liam. The mere thought of Liam Spencer being the father sent a violent shudder down Steffy's spine. Liam has always been the chaotic variable in her life, a man whose presence inevitably brings a hurricane of emotional devastation. Currently, Liam is deeply entangled in pushing Hope to abandon Forster Creations and sign a life-changing contract with Katie Logan's fashion house. He has been venting to Bill Spencer, acting as the ultimate champion for Hope's independence, entirely oblivious to the ticking time bomb he helped plant in Steffy's life. If Liam were to discover that he might be the father of Steffy's child, his reaction would be entirely unpredictable. He would undoubtedly feel a sense of obligation, his notorious savior complex kicking into overdrive, which would only serve to drag Steffy further into a messy, inescapable triangle that she has spent years trying to permanently escape. The emotional whiplash of dealing with Liam's inevitable guilt and confusion is a burden Steffy knows she cannot bear, especially not while trying to maintain her sanity in the middle of a corporate war. But the true, gut-wrenching tragedy of this situation lies in the devastating impact it would have on Finn. When Steffy thinks of her husband, her heart shatters into a million jagged pieces. Finn has been her rock, her sanctuary, the man who offered her a pure, uncomplicated love that healed the deep wounds of her past. Just days ago, they had shared tender, romantic kisses at the Cliff House, a beautiful oasis of calm amidst the raging storm of the Forster-Logan feud. Finn looks at her with absolute adoration and unwavering trust, believing her to be the fiercely loyal, principled woman he married. The realization that she has betrayed that profound trust is a poison coursing through her veins. If Finn were to learn the truth, not just about the pregnancy, but about the night of weakness with Liam, the betrayal would destroy him. It would annihilate the beautiful life they have built, turning their sanctuary into a graveyard of broken promises. The thought of seeing the light die in Finn's eyes is a torture so exquisite that Steffy can barely draw breath. Beyond the catastrophic personal fallout, the professional implications of this secret are nothing short of apocalyptic. Steffy is acutely aware that Brooke Logan Forster is waiting in the wings like a starving predator, her eyes fixed entirely on the co-CEO chair. Brooke's recent failure to convince Ridge to demote Steffy and install her in the leadership role has only intensified the matriarch's bitter resentment. Brooke has been desperately searching for a vulnerability, a chink in Steffy's armor that she can exploit to prove that Ridge's daughter is unfit to lead the family's legacy. A scandal of this magnitude, a pregnancy wrapped in the sordid, scandalous sheets of an affair with Liam Spencer, would be the ultimate ammunition. Brooke would not hesitate for a fraction of a second to weaponize this moral failing, parading it before the board of directors and the media to orchestrate Steffy's absolute ruin. She would frame Steffy